December 15th, 2191. Dear Ambrose, in an age when we need writing for so few things, it may seem antiquated to write you an Advent letter. But my son, Advent is a time of memory, so the medium seems as appropriate to me as my message. This time of year, Christians take time to mark God's place in their hearts, to remember the gulf that once separated them from Him, to remember His coming, and to prepare for His coming again. The first time He was born in a stable, for the people had no place for Him. The second time, perhaps we will be ready. Do you remember that run-down warehouse that used to be down the street from us? It was once a church. It might seem strange to you that people should build such a drab structure to honor their God, not from need, but by choice. But in those days, they said, God looks on the heart. In those days, they said, we do not need distractions, we only need Jesus. They said truth was not to be found in stones, nor beauty in doctrine, nor goodness in fantastical tales. So truth and beauty and goodness went their separate ways, and soon they were scarcely to be found in anything that could shape the heart. And God, while not banished from the shrinking number of hearts that welcomed Him, occupied tighter and tighter quarters within them. There was no room for Him in the inn, only the stable. That was long ago, many years before you were born. You do not know a time before the renaissance of the Christian imagination, when the faithful around the world tore down the walls. To be sure, your generation has its own great weakness to confront, which I do not need to enumerate to you. But today, it is a given that a church seeks to open men's hearts to the transcendent glory of God through its architecture. Children enter His sanctuary and know they are on holy ground. They do not need to be told to whisper. You, my son, grew up surrounded by tales and songs so wonderful that they awakened your eyes to the works of God in the ordinary and inspired you to extraordinary hopes and loves, nobility and heroism. Christianity, as you know it, is the ancient and endless work of the Word, the inheritance of generations. And the works of the dead are, as the poet said, tongued with fire beyond the language of the living. To you it is a given that your faith is the great enchantment, coursing from the church through you, preparing a place for the King yet to come, even as He meets you here and now in the great mystery of the sacraments. But I want you to remember that it was not always so. Once a few candles, an old stone church, and carols from a small choir in some English village could fill people with longing, for you see, in those days, that tiny flash of glory, that tangible reunification of goodness, truth, and beauty was temporary. It was never allowed to survive past December 25th. Once that momentary thin space during Advent was all people had. That moment when ancient traditions, old songs, memories of the ages, and those fantastical tales ceased briefly to be seen as a distraction or a threat, and God's magic was glimpsed in the endless winter. As you walk with the faithful around the world through this season of Advent, dear Ambrose, I charge you to remember those dark times, when man mistook a glimpse of the divine for mere nostalgia, and missed the real power and purpose of that magic in making all things new. When he had forgotten that those traditions and others like them were not the worship of ashes, but the preservation of fire. Remember that men and women are infinitely capable of building walls against the thin places between them and the transcendent, and your age will be filled with new attempts to do so. As you face the challenges of that age, in your world and in your own heart, draw from the deeper well, from the union of goodness, truth, and beauty to which you are an heir. Make ready your whole heart and your whole year for the King, and line your path with the wonders of his beauty. For the glory even you have seen is nothing to what is to come. Be ready. Fondly, your father.